That really is kind of weird. Okay.
Yeah, I have this nagging cough that prevents me from getting out there and being with people because, well, I'll tell you in a minute once we get started.
We're already started. Tell us. Tell us. Yeah.
Okay, so yesterday I had to miss a funeral of of a friend and the father of a friend. He was both.
Oh.
Mr. Algie Vant. Many of the people who listen might know him. He's been quite famous around. He's been big in the sports of Niagara. He's done a lot of work that way in the past. Now I couldn't go to his funeral because I've got COVID, and I phoned public health. So this is what they tell me. I says, look, I've had COVID probably about 12 days now, and how long am I going to be contagious? And well, the first thing I did is I phoned them and got in the queue, and they cut me off. Beep, 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 beep. So I sat in the queue for a while on the phone and then just got completely cut off. So I phoned again, Niagara Public Health. This time I get the answering machine again. They put me back in queue. And then I talked to a lady and she says, okay, I tell her my concern that I'm worried about how contagious I am with this COVID. She says, okay, I'll switch you over. Boop, boop, boop. They cut me off again. So now I got a phone back for the third time. This time I get on, get it back in the queue, wait for somebody to talk to me. Somebody finally talks to me and says, well, I'm going to transfer you. And I says, wait. Don't do that. Don't do that. I've been cut off twice now. She said, okay, I'll stay on and make sure you get on to talk to somebody. I'll send you to the right person. So she sends me to the right person, but it wasn't the right person.
Mm-hmm.
So then that person had to transfer me to somebody else. And finally I got to talk to somebody, and of course, nobody tells you anything yes or no. So I just told them, look, I've had these. And so she says, well, what about symptoms? If you have symptoms, I says, the only one I have left is the cough. I says, but I'm still testing positive. They said, well, after about 5 or 7 days, then we recommend that you stop testing. I said, why? Does it mean anything? But she wouldn't answer that question. She just says, we just go by symptoms after that. So fever and it's just, well, my cough, is that a symptom? Is it a problem? It's and we just go by symptoms, she said. Well, I says, well, what kind of symptoms are they? We just go by symptoms. So if your symptoms have ended, then wait 24 hours after your symptoms have ended, and then you're in. Well, I got this nagging cough, and I'm not so sure that it has anything to do with COVID anymore. Oh, we just go by symptoms. Okay, all right. Go by symptoms. Is that nagging cough of symptoms? Oh, well, we just go by symptoms. Okay.
Yeah. So we're not going to answer your question. Yeah.
No, we're not going to do it directly. We're just going to leave it up to you. If you think that's symptoms, that's okay. If you don't think that's symptoms, that's up to you.
I think that probably, while you've got the cough, my thoughts, probably while you've got the cough, it's probably nothing, but I wouldn't risk it.
No. And that's exactly what I did. I didn't go to the funeral, and I will not go to, I never went to the Kiwanis meeting on Monday. I didn't go to the funeral yesterday.
Yeah.
And I won't be in person to the Honeymoon City Toastmaster meeting tonight.
There's some bad news here from Laurie Parliament, who says you might have long COVID. You could cough for 8 weeks.
Yeah, I've been told that. Long COVID, though, is a different thing. Long COVID usually has to do with the cognitive abilities you have, where you can't get back. You're always in a state of mental fog, and you can't get your stuff back. I know a couple of people who've had long COVID, and it take a long time to get their abilities back. It's almost like they get mini dementia going on, but they can recover from it, but it takes them a very long time. like years. Like I think the one friend he's just coming out of it now after 2 years.
Yeah.
And he of course he got COVID, and he had this. He got pretty sick, and then he was stuck with long COVID, and he was always very upset with people who didn't want to wear a mask or anything else like that. The Parliament person that was that disappeared has been found, by the way, and her funeral, I think, was last week, and apparent suicide, apparently. And so all those signs you still see up there, they're not well. That's being resolved. But here's something else. My someone I love, family member, was having troubles with her stomach and pains in her stomach and her quadrants. And I said to her, it sounds like appendicitis. And she says, no, the doctors checked her out. It wasn't appendicitis. I said, well, I have a friend who discovered that his doctors were wrong about the appendicitis. He had a second opinion, and they found out. So he had been in pain a lot, and he was told it wasn't appendicitis, but it turned out to be appendicitis. And then the appendicitis. So my this friend, they're not friend, but my family member, she went to the hospital on Monday night, and she said she'd go on Monday night because it wouldn't be so crowded. She went there on Monday night. She had high levels of white blood count, which meant there was an infection, and a few other things, and of course lots of pain. And the doctor says, "Oh, they're not going to do a CT scan. It's probably just something you ate," and sent her home. Of course, she had to come right back in the morning. She comes back in the morning, but they don't see her until 5:30.
Yeah.
Right. And finally, they give her a CT scan, and guess what? Her appendix burst, and she'll be going under the knife today.
Yeah.
There you go. This is the same hospital that left my mother in there with a broken hip. They operated on the broken hip. It didn't work. They didn't take one X-ray, and just kept sending her to therapy and telling us that she was uncooperative in therapy. And it wasn't until I talked to a nurse on a late shift. I said, my mom's been here for a month. She should be long out of here. What's going on? I'll tell the house doctor, she said. The house doctor came and did the X-ray that I asked for and found out that her hip had never even partially healed. And they were sending her to therapy. That's GNGH. Also, a friend of mine, just last year, his wife died, but he took her to the hospital and they weren't going to do anything about it. And he wanted an MRI scan on her head. Said no, and they scheduled one for months later. So he just went to Hamilton. He got the MRI right away, and she had a deadly brain disease, which the other doctors just thought it was some mild dementia coming on. I don't know about that hospital, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I sat in there for 8 hours when I had a broken hip with with blood pressure of 200. Don't go there. Go to St. Catharines.
I told you about a story of something that's going on today. So today, Ukraine and Canada both on a Kozelenko from St. Catharines and another Canadian soldier out of Calgary, I believe, who were both killed in the Ukraine just over a year ago. And the piece of information that I've got is that Ukraine leader Zelensky may well be in Ottawa today to give these medals of honor out.
Well, I hope that it is, and I just hope that no Waffen SS Ukrainian soldier happens to be in the audience this time. It was a worldwide humiliating event that the Parliament of Canada is up clapping and cheering for a Waffen SS soldier because our people were so ignorant, they didn't realize that Russia was on our side during the last war. How did that get past them? How stupid can everybody be? It was extremely embarrassing to me as a Canadian. So this maybe will make up for it. Now Zelensky's just beat a assassination attempt. Apparently there was an assassination attempt on him. And
he may not be here. That's why I didn't say anything yesterday. He may not be coming, but the rumors are that he might. Now, the reason I know about Kozelenko is because his mother works for our firm.
Okay.
His mother, Lynn Baxter, works for our firm. So she's heading up. She's already in Ottawa right now because she'll be getting this Medal of Honor, Ukrainian Medal of Honor for him, and of course the other soldiers' parents will be there as well today.
I feel that it's a terrible thing that was he Canadian Ukrainian that went there, or
Canadian Ukrainian? Yeah, his name is Zelenko, so you can see from that it's Ukrainian origin.
Yeah. So he went to Ukraine and died, and so did other Canadians. And unfortunately, Ukraine does not have enough people to continue the war. What we don't hear often is the hundreds of thousands of them left Ukraine. Well, tens of thousands of them left Ukraine, and Russia, hundreds of thousands left Russia because they didn't want to get in the war. So if you're a young man in Ukraine right now, you're going to be in pretty bad shape, even an older guy, because you're going to be called up to duty. It's one of these senseless forever wars. I really don't trust forever wars like Afghanistan and Iraq. All that did was make a lot of money for the arms dealers. The military, the industrial military complex in the United States made massive amounts of money in Iraq and Afghanistan, fitting up armies with billions of dollars worth of equipment, and those armies collapsed within weeks of the U.S. leaving. And there goes billions of dollars of taxpayer money right into the hands of the Taliban and right into the hands of ISIS. Just idiotic. But anyway, this is a solemn event, and if Zelensky comes, it will maybe make up for that embarrassing fiasco the last time he was here, and he's going to beg for more money, and he's going to ask for more money, more Canadian taxpayer money, because he has to, because he's stuck in a war, and many people figure that the West was the one that got him in this war. Because in 2014, after 2014, they were trying to come up with some sort of arrangement with the Russians and the Brits and Americans, evidently, and I don't have any proof for this, but tried to tell them to continue with the war. And it was the NATO that wanted the Ukraine as part of NATO. And that was the line that Putin would not allow. They wanted Georgia and Ukraine as part of NATO. Well, they crushed Georgia because it was really small. Ukraine is much bigger, so they just took a big hunk of the eastern part of the country, and they're not going to give it back.
No, they're not going to give it back, and that's
it'll be 200 years before they get it back.
Yeah, that's probably true. It's probably, but sadly, true.
And the eastern part of the country is where most of the Russians live. So the Russian-speaking, the 20% of Ukraine that speaks Russian lives there in the eastern part of the country. So they have more connections with Russia than they do with Ukraine.
Yep. All right. So, what was a month ago today, Dave?
It was the 8th of April. Yes, and it was the eclipse day. How much money did we make out of that eclipse? I don't really hear.
Interesting question. I don't know. We've not heard any report back about that.
No, I have a feeling it was rather modest. Otherwise, Jim Diodati and others would be singing the praises of how well they prepared for that event. We do know that James Cameron came up here. Our guy James. I think if a lot of people knew that James Cameron was here, we may have got even more people here. But we didn't get a whole lot of people here. We got nowhere near 1 million people. We may have got 1/5 of that in and around the Niagara region. I'm not so sure we made a whole lot of money off of that. Of all the people coming here, it was touted to be that. It was touted. We had emergency programs ready to go. We had a state of emergency all called, but it all sort of died flat, and it didn't really.
And what's worse, of course, is that the weather forecast for Niagara didn't show any hope that we would actually be able to see the eclipse.
Yeah. Now, if it had been a bright, wide open day like the day before and the day after was very clear, we may have got more people too. However, even if more people did come, they wouldn't have been able to fit in there. And it was
well, you know,
pointed out, it was pretty darn hard.
Yeah. To be quite honest, you didn't need to get right to the heart of Niagara Falls to actually see the eclipse. You could have watched it probably. You could have watched it in, let's say, Jordan countryside or something like that. You know, just found a nice spot out in the country and found that. Okay, so Mike says there were about 250,000 people there. I think Jim scared people away by saying there would be 1 million. Possibly. But I think also,
he had a lot more to do.
I think also that 1 million was including the current population of Niagara.
Yeah, I think it had a lot more to do with the fact that it wasn't a very clear day.
Yeah, a lot more. Yeah. And you know, hey, those probably bookings going on and off that day when people were not, you know, that weekend when people were not sure whether they were coming or not, you know.
Yeah, I think they had like 20,000 rooms or expected 20,000 people in the hotels, according to the reservations.
Yeah, but probably every Airbnb was booked up as well. You know, every bed and breakfast, a lot of campgrounds, etc., etc. That part of the market is a lot harder to measure.
Yes. I don't know. We didn't really make a whole lot of money out of it, it seems, and it was really a lot of flash. It was flash in the pan in many respects. Sounded big, but really didn't get that big. And regardless of all that, I enjoyed it a lot. I felt it fascinating. I got a few glimpses of the sun through gaps in the clouds, and of course the darkness that ensued afterwards. Very interesting.
A lot of that actually was dependent upon exactly where you were. In central St. Catharines, again, I got some gaps in the clouds, just enough to be able to see, you know, to see the eclipse happening in 2 or 3 second intervals, that sort of thing. So we'd see 2 or 3 seconds of it, we'd lose about 20 seconds, then we'd see another 2 or 3 seconds. And it was an interesting way to see the progress of the moon across the sun. But there were other parts. Somebody told me they were at the center in St. Catharines. It opened up there at the Penn Center. They saw it for about a minute.
Oh, a full minute. Oh, wow.
Full minute. Yeah. And, you know, hey, that's just who would think it would be that, you know, the difference between downtown St. Catharines. People here in Niagara said they didn't see much at all. But, you know, but again, maybe it opened up at certain points. Right. Anyway.
Well, it was one thing that galvanized people. It got people together. It got people interested in science. It got people interested in music, that the music that usually went with the eclipse and was inspired by eclipses at different times. So it was almost like primal that time, like when you're like in ancient Sumeria or something, and your priests know how to predict the eclipses and get everybody together, and the darkness comes, and everybody be in awe and wonder, Is it the gods, or what is it? What's happening?
Yeah.
And that sort of wonder, the we have to remember that astronomy, the stars, the moon, the sun, eclipses, and all that were the foundational parts of our science. It began as priests observing things in the sky and beginning to predict things, wondering about the skies, being able to predict time and other things of that kind. So when we have an eclipse, it brings us right back to that early part of our inquisitiveness of the universe, when we had time to think that way, because we had agrarian societies like in the early Sumerians and Chaldeans and Assyrians and so on, when they were able to look into the sky and start to wonder what it was, what's happening, and ask questions. And so when that happens, I think that brings us back to that very point, sort of the beginning of science, the beginning of that time when we had enough time to be able to think and inquire about what that was.
Yeah. Yeah, but I thought it was, we should remember it. And as you said, the statistics haven't been released. Maybe it's a little bit early for that, but, it would have been nice. All right. Well, something that is out there, Niagara's real estate market has continued an upward trend in positive direction, up 1.4%, as benchmark prices ticked upwards with gains and sales and new list of gains in the sale price and the numbers of new listings. So the benchmark price rose from 633,000 to 644,000 last month, an increase of 1.8% month over month. And the numbers of homes went up as well. The month over month sales rose from 8.9% from 602 homes from 533. And the number of new listings also jumped 19.6% with to 1,396 from 1,167. Those numbers, though, were quite low, so I don't know that you can draw any statistical significance from them.
I don't know. I guess it's just that continuous interest in in real estate.
Yeah,
I think all this tells us really is there are some more people from the GTA coming here to move. And in this article, it goes on to say that Niagara was one of those places that was hit the most by price increases when just prior to COVID, people realized in the GTA and started to discover Niagara that it was a wide open market and that it could sell their houses for big money in Toronto, come down here and buy a palace for the kind of money. And what we find here now is there are houses still empty in and around the place that have been bought by investors outside. We find a lot of houses for rent from people from around the area, from outside of the area. And what it tells us is that we still cannot afford homes in our own city.
But those rental homes are being rented out at too high a price, right? So they're being rented out at a price that, again, can only be afforded by Torontonians.
Yeah, the only region that has saw a decrease was West Lincoln, and there's more activity now. And I'm quoting here. There's more activity now, absolutely, which is evident of the number of sales and the decrease in the days on the market. So there are some of the buyers are now that have accepted the raises in interest rates, have accepted that, and those people who can afford are now sort of probably setting their sights a little bit lower. They with the lower interest rates prior to, maybe they're shooting for something around $800,000, but now seems to be shooting lower. Still looking for a house in the area, but looking for a lower priced house. And I think probably just the prices of the houses have come down. Month over month, sales rose 8.9% from 602. I know a lady that was a store manager and a real estate agent at the same time, Avondale store manager, but gave up the managing of the store after decades, and went completely into full-time real estate because that's where the money is. I also phoned the car dealership where I once bought a car, looking for the salesperson that sold it to me once. Sold me a car, and she had given up selling cars for real estate full time. So when you get experienced salespeople and they dropped everything else they have and concentrate on real estate, you know that there's still a hot market. Realtors are seeing the highest amount of activity in entry level to middle level homes. Niagara is really put on the map. I mean, here's what I was talking about before, and I'll quote it here. Niagara was really put on the map a few years before the pandemic, as many people were moving to Niagara because it's close proximity to multiple major airports, major cities, the recreation and lifestyle Niagara offers, for the value it offers in home prices and work opportunities. Niagara is sitting around 4 months worth of inventory, which Morris said is generally considered a balanced market. But cautions inventory can be gone so quickly, as we witnessed a few years ago. Yes, and what we did find out too, of course, famously, we had a council report that says those people who already live here in Niagara Falls, over 80% of them could not afford a house in today's market. There's no sound, Peter. You don't have sound.
Yeah, okay. The knock-on effect of that, I muted it. Sorry. The knock-on effect of that is, of course, that rental home prices are probably staying steady right now, because if they're being driven by owners that are in the Toronto market, they wouldn't necessarily they'd be more conscious of the Toronto market than the local Niagara market, and that therefore they can really continue to continue with the rental prices the way they were.
Yeah. So there's also it appears that there's a kind of investment. A Kiwanian I know, he has a house. People from the GTA bought the house across the street from him or just off the side and left it empty. So they came down, looked at it, bought it, and left it empty. Yeah, and it has been left empty for a while. There's a house, I think it was on John Street. I was looking at the other day, and it was left empty, and squatters got in there. And they ran electrical extension cords all the way across the street to an apartment there, and were stealing power from the apartment. And they stayed there for quite a while, and it took them a long time to get them out. So squatters find an empty building and they're going into it, and that one's right down on John Street, which should be probably a Airbnb or bed and breakfast or something, but it's left empty. And there were a lot of houses down there left empty after the big crunch of buying houses. Unfortunately, that's where we are right now. It doesn't look too good for young people, and I have a feeling that in this town, because there's so many young people who could not afford homes, they're going to blame the feds. They're going to blame the feds and go after them. And Mike Christopher says, traffic is growing, putting out entire city in a gridlock. Poor planning is to blame. Out city is not built to handle kind of our city. Yeah. Yes, you're quite right. But there's this big rush to build more houses. And I have a fear that traffic is going to be put on the back burner.
These empty houses are not helping the housing market at all. All right, buying a house and leaving it empty is actually, when you've got the amount of homelessness that we have, is not helping that market at all. I'm not saying that you're going to end up that you would want homeless people, you would want to rent that to a homeless person, but the point being is that if you rent it out and you rent it out, there's income coming in. I have another one. As I said, there was a right across the street from myself, there's actually an empty house. They've been growing it for about a year. They've been basically growing it, was the wrong word. They've been fixing it for about a year, but now it's still empty. There's no sign that they're going to move anybody in there. And I'm just waiting. I'm wondering whether the owners there are looking at the real estate market, and looking to see whether they can make a profit in maybe 6 months' time.
Maybe they're waiting for interest rates to go down again. They're supposed to go down.
Yep,
I don't really think that's going to happen anytime soon. Everybody says that. Our inflation is still pretty bad. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah. And Mike's also saying, okay, so empty houses on and Airbnbs on every block. And the Airbnb is another issue, but empty houses is certainly a big issue. Neighborhoods in Thorold have houses for rent that for lease all over the place, right? Yes. And actually, Thorold is unique in our area insofar as if you have a home in Thorold and you rent it out, you have to get a license from the city.
Good idea.
Right. And there are many people that lease houses out in Thorold that do not have a license. They get caught all the time. It's a $1,500 fine.
Well, we have right now. It's kind of like catch-22. We want more people in Niagara. We want to grow the city. We want, but what we're doing is we're not really growing the city. We're not really growing the industries. We're not growing that, but we are growing a population that has come down here to live because it's a nicer place to live where they came from. And for them, the houses are affordable, but not affordable for the people that live here. So we are being pushed out of our own city little by little because we can't afford our own houses. So we are getting the growth that most cities want, but we are really not growing economically. Like the growth usually comes with like a new factory or a new industry or something comes into town, and then it brings expertise or brings people to work there.
Or new jobs which have expertise.
Yeah.
Right. Especially what we need around here are new high value jobs to be brought to the city. And that doesn't come around with the city taking a kind of almost laissez-faire type approach. That comes around by actually the city encouraging its current entrepreneurs to do better, to employ more, encouraging growth towards the city, encouraging new people to bring their businesses here.
Yes, and well, we don't find that really, do we? We just find that we are now becoming a bedroom community.
Yeah, we don't have any of that. The fact that we get industry coming here is more by accident than by a deliberate policy of our city.
Yes, so I don't know what the average person's going to do when the market continues to climb like that. I think it'll be an off and on thing once the area is saturated with new investors, and that may take a while because we have so many new investors coming into the area that it may take a while before Niagara actually levels off. Remember, Niagara is one of the worst. Like, there's a housing crisis all over North America, but Niagara is one of the worst. for having its prices go skyrocket over and above the other ones. Well, housing prices went high everywhere. They went extremely high here. And that's because of the proximity of the GTA and the easy access the foreigners had of buying houses here in Ontario, which was finally admitted to. I mean, this went way back to the Wynne government, and the Wynne government's approach there, they had a certain tax on foreign bought houses, but there was all kinds of loopholes in it. It didn't work. It was really, really weak. Now they have a 2-year moratorium or something like that on foreigners buying homes. But anyway, that's the government, and they move at a glacial pace, and and that's when they're in high gear.
Yeah. All right. So moving on. Someone will eventually succeed Justin Trudeau, but just a recent survey by Abacus Data asked about 1,500 responses about their impressions of 7 possible liberal leadership candidates. And do you know what the biggest answer was? What the most popular answer was?
Freeland.
I don't know.
Oh, yeah, that's it.
4% of the people said, I don't know. Freeland come up 13%. Mark Carney, former Bank of Canada governor, was 11%. Of all, and there's a spattering of others. And hey, do you know the best name of all of these ones that should be the next leader of the Liberal Party?
Which one is that?
Best name of the list: Francois Philippe Champagne, the industry minister.
Just because he's got a cool name?
I fancy him because he has a cool name, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of figure, yeah.
I mean, who's going to take Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly? That's too jolly. We don't need a jolly person as Prime Minister.
Well, she's too young. She's too young and she's too pretty. And unfortunately, young, pretty women or younger, pretty women, unfortunately, do not, just by the fact that they're young and pretty, means that people don't take them seriously enough. Young and pretty will open doors for employment, but after that, young and pretty has a stigmatism to it. That you only got there, you got where you were because you were young and pretty. Trudeau, of course, he's been able to do the young and pretty thing himself, but he's a man, so he can get away with it a little bit more. And Mark Carney probably is a very good choice because he was Bank of Canada. He himself has already stood up and said he doesn't like the current budget, the Liberal budget. Freeland has all the chops to be leader. She has all the background. She's an economist and she really knows her stuff. But she's a plump, squeaky sounding woman, which unfortunately, despite all her gravitas, that'll work against her because of people's impressions.
The biggest problem with Freeland came with, we looked at our expenses in our family and we decided to cut out the Disney Channel. Whoopee-doo. What about those people who can't afford Netflix or the Disney Channel anyway, who wouldn't be cutting it out because they couldn't damn well afford it in the first place?
Yeah, she gave this really patronizing type of, everybody's having affordability trouble, but if you get rid of Disney Channel, which we did, you may have, and I could just see everybody just fuming because this is the answer of an elitist. And that is where Trudeau and Freeland, and I don't know about Mark Carney, he's probably a little bit more realistic, but somebody who says that is like, let them eat cake attitude.
Yeah.
The peasants have no bread. Well, they can eat cake. They're completely out of it. I mean, Marie Antoinette did not say that as a slur or was trying to be funny. She was actually too stupid and ignorant to understand that there was no bread, so why don't you eat cake instead? That was due to her ignorance, not trying to be funny or not trying to diss the peasants. She wasn't like that.
It's the same.
But you get this let them eat cake kind of attitude from the liberals, and you think to yourself, oh my God.
Yeah, it's the same attitude. It's the same attitude coming out of Freeland. But of course, the question about Freeland, because she's deputy prime minister, she is perhaps the singly most well known of all of them. Mark Carney's time as Bank of Canada governor has elevated him to perhaps the next highest position, with with the others, like public safety minister Dominic LeBlanc. Well, the only time he seemed to be speaking was really when it was bad news for everybody. Housing minister Sean Fraser has really not come up with the goods in the last couple of months when it comes to the housing crisis, and he's been making and even there, Trudeau makes the statements, not Sean Fraser.
Yeah, but he's tall, good looking, and serious looking. So he doesn't have the kind of sort of elitist kind of look that Trudeau have, tra la 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 kind of thing, skipping down the maypole towards the maypole. That guy he looks serious. He's tall, good looking, he looks serious. So I think he's going to be the face of Liberals coming forward.
All right. The other one is Treasury Board President Anita Anand.
No chance. No chance.
Yeah. Exactly that. Probably no chance at all. Yeah.
So I think that like I said before, I think Trudeau's 9/11 will come around 9/11. But other than that, maybe around Halloween, given the second best opportunity, it'd be Halloween.
As I said, I don't think he will. I don't believe he will. He will basically resign at all. And biggest challenge for all of these people is that they're really, none of them are household names. And this is what David Coletto, Abacus Data's chief executive officer, was stating. Who knows any of these people? We don't. You and I do, because we take looks at politics, right?
Yes.
We think about these sort of things. Mike makes a point. Champagne is that little weasel. No, thank you. Freeland is all positive, nothing negative. Did Carney run the bank? Did Carney not run the Bank of England? No, I don't think so. I think he ran.
Yes, he did. Yeah, he did. Oh, okay. He was the bank. He did the Bank of Canada and went and did the Bank of England. Yeah, so he really does have chops.
So he has real serious experience, at least in the financial sector.
Yes, and especially when he's dissed the current the current budget of Trudeau's budget, he's dismissed it out of hand, and he's like the Bank of Canada guy. So, and he's a liberal. So if he thinks it's that bad to make waves in and among his own party like that, then it really tells you something. Now, Freeland, I have to say that Freeland really does have the chops. I've seen her interviewed with Matt Taibbi. There's an interviewer, her and Matt Taibbi were the people being interviewed at the same time. She really does have the stuff to run an economically sound country. I think if she was taking the Trudeau shackles taken off of her, she could probably do a very good job. The only thing is she electable with a squeaky voice, I want like this, and the idea that she gave up the Disney Channel like all good Canadians should, So that
Well,
her idea that she's completely out of it.
Yeah, she won't, of course, get Disney Channel's support, Disney support, will she?
No, but she's got. She
she'll
really does. My point is, she really does have the chops. She's got the economic wherewithal to do a really good job, and unfortunately, I think she'll be overlooked. And that Fraser guy is going to be the guy, or maybe Carney, because
Carney, but again, is Carney currently an MP? Because if he isn't, he has to get a seat.
No problem.
Yeah, well, there you go. You mean maybe Justin Trudeau will give up his when he resigns?
Justin Trudeau, the feminist, will the raging feminist. He was very fond of saying that a while ago. He noticed he hasn't said it too much any later. I'm a feminist. He used to like to say that.
Okay. The other thing here is of those who can claim to be Liberal supporters. That's actually the weirdest thing is about here is that I don't know was also the top option, but 32% at 32%, but 27% said they would prefer Freeland, and 14% Carney.
It's yes, I think the average Canadian just doesn't have time to keep track of all the different particular candidates coming out there. That's what the news is for. And can we trust the CBC to give us the proper news? And that's probably another article we have here.
That's another question entirely, especially with the CBC having a spat with the Tories right now.
No, it's not just the Tories. The Tories have come to the front. There's an inquiry, and of course, they're trying to. Okay.
Yeah, we can move on to that if you want.
Yeah, I think it's probably time for that. I don't think that anybody here listening has any idea and any misgivings that Trudeau will probably not be the leader next year after the election or even prior to that, because the numbers are so low. Now, if the Conservatives really mess up, like they were trying very hard to weld them to the white supremacist extremists in the United States. If that takes off, the Conservatives could be in trouble because everybody's afraid of the Trumps and the white and the extremists in the United States. However, that's a bit of a reach. Remember, they did that with the Freedom Convoy too. They tried to make them white supremacists and misogynists and all that other stuff, and it made them look kind of foolish to try to do that. But we'll see. We'll see. The Liberals are coming up with something like that, and basically their strategy is going to be something like that. That they're going to that the Canadian Conservatives are basically all Alex Joneses waiting to pounce on Canadians.
Yeah. Okay. So the CEO of CBC, Catherine Tate, appeared before a select committee in Parliament, and even before that meeting occurred, she faced a barrage of questions from Conservative MPs. And that is given rise to essentially a recent spat between primarily the CBC and these Conservative MPs. Primarily the two that are out there. One of them being Rachel Thomas, and I forget off the top of my head the other person. Kevin War.
Pardon me?
Yeah. Kevin War is the other.
Kevin War, but there's another woman as well, that another female Conservative MP. I had it written down. I don't know where I put it though.
Yeah.
So particularly Rachel Thomas tried to nail down the CBC. Now, basically, what happened is the CBC, the Canadian government gave a lot of money to all the television networks and so on, and that money was absorbed. And then after the money was given to save jobs, the networks laid off a whole lot of people. CTV was one of them, and CBC was another the government network, CBC, laid off 600 people. They are reducing the hours of many others. There may be even more. What's happening is the CBC cannot function with the money it has. It is in debt. I think it's $125 million or something like that, over budget. So they're trying to bring that in. What the conservative MPs and what other MPs are thinking too, but not saying it so loudly, is are you going, those executives that chopped the 600 people to get their numbers down, to get back to a more affordable state, those people who signed off on the layoff notices for over 600 and maybe up to 800, are they going to get a bonus this year like they normally do?
Yeah.
So the bonus now, Tate, who is the chief executive officer of the Canadian Broadcasting Company, has said earlier that yes, they will come up with the recommendations for bonuses, and she calls it different. She calls it performance pay, basically, and whether someone is going to get more performance pay. She didn't call it bonuses, but that's what it is. And she said that decision, the recommendations would start coming in January. They would conclude. They would be discussed in March, and at the end of March, they would know the recommendations. And then the recommendations will have to go to the board, and the final decision will have to be made in June. Tate saying, well, the recommendations, tell us the recommendations. Do you think you're going to get a bonus? Are the other executives going to get a bonus? And Tate just said, well, we don't know that yet. And she says, but you're on the board, and obviously the recommendations forwarded to the board because you said they were going to be done by the end of March. They would start considering them in the beginning of March and come to conclusion, and then the report would forward to the board of directors. So what is in that report? Obviously, what the recommendations are. Are those recommendations? Are you going to get a bonus, or are the other executives going to get a bonus at a time when you laid off so many people? So,
and that's actually always the big issue, isn't it? When executives get mega bonuses at a time when people have been laid off. Nobody complains about it. If you've got people being laid off and the executives pulling the belt as well and say, no bonuses this year because things are bad, right? You have a bit more respect for them. You may still oppose them, but you may have a bit more respect for them. Whereas when it comes to basically people, people getting laid off or people losing bonuses, etc., but the executive still makes a ton of money and laughs in your face, that is always problematic. And, yes, I understand where these conservative MPs are coming from. And the trouble is, this is, saying things like either you lied on January 30th or you're lying now is not helping the situation, is it?
No, but is she? Is that true? Basically, Tate is obviously avoiding the question. She is hiding behind an extreme technicality because the board will not make the final decision until June. But the recommendations are in, and Tate knows those recommendations, but will not say what those are. She says there's a process and we have to go through the process. So they were asked, in the meantime, you do know what the recommendations are. What are the recommendations? Now we know what the recommendations are. How are you going to get? And she says, well, I don't know. And that really is a lie. She does not know 100% that she will get a bonus. She may not now because of the eyeballs on it, but she does know that she's up for a bonus because she probably put it in herself. And she's been at this for 40 years, and she really didn't. She's an extremely good politician because she really didn't answer anything any real question. She just put it off. The process hasn't finished. The process, it's too early to tell. It's too early to tell. But she's been saying that ever since January 30th.
Yeah.
It's too early to tell. It's too early to tell. Now in June, they might have another excuse why they can't tell you if they're going to get bonuses or not. Have they got bonuses before? That kind of thing. They all seem to get bonuses, performance bonuses. But the thing here is this is not a private company where your executives can scoop a lot of coin from their stockholders. The stockholders here are Canadian, the Canadian taxpayer,
public, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. And what they've done here is they've just emaciated CBC by getting rid of 600 people, another 121 people going to. It was management stack because a lot of the mid-level managers were gone because they got rid of more managers than they did rank and file.
Yeah, but the further on this is that they cut 600 jobs, but there was also 200 vacancies that would go unfilled.
So you're looking at 800 altogether.
Yeah,
800 jobs, and that aren't going to be paid for through the CBC budget. But are they going to get a bonus from the CBC budget?
Well, and here additionally, you've got cuts of $40 million to productions made by the CBC. Right, so that's basically television programs that were going to be made that are no longer being made by the CBC.
Yes, and so there's production cuts and there's layoffs all over the place, and they want to say that this is a global thing. That's not really their fault. There's no way they could be prepared for this. They just had to cut 600 jobs just like that. Another 100 or 200 they're not going to fill, and they're going to get rid of management, cut production because they can't pay for themselves. And I'd really like to know, how much does a CBC executive get at this particular time? We know that CBC is a top-heavy organization. It seems to be trying to trim itself now, but is it? And because the Liberals seem to be the ones that are more inclined to want the CBC to tell their own story, and the CBC seems to comply, that the Conservatives want to get rid of it. I'm not so sure that's a good idea.
I don't think it's a good idea to get rid of the CBC, but I understand where the Conservatives are coming from in their questioning of Tate.
Yes, and I really don't really like her attitude when I watched it on TV. It looked to me as if she was hiding behind minor technicalities.
Yes.
You know, like she's waiting at a bus stop and someone says, "Are you going to get on the bus?" And she says, "I don't know," because the bus isn't here yet. But you're at the bus and you've got a ticket in your hand. Are you going to get on the bus when it comes here? I don't know. The bus isn't here yet. I'll tell you when the bus gets here, if I'm going to get on or not. That's the kind of answer she was giving.
Yeah, I know.
Emwell knew she was going to get a bonus if she could possibly squeeze it through. And hoping too, and she's a good expert. She knows every time she defers it to a later time, there'll be less enthusiasm to come. It'll be forgotten, or chances that will be forgotten.
Yeah, you've got that ticket in your hand. Do you think you're getting on that bus or not? You know, yeah.
Well, I don't know at this time because the bus hasn't arrived.
Right? Yeah, most people expect you to. Now, granted, are you getting on the number 17? No, right? I am getting on the number 23, right? I get you that, but you know, you've got.
Can you tell us anything more about the bus? Well, if the bus comes here, I may or may not get on it on the bus. And well, why do you have a ticket and why are you standing here? Well, let me tell you about the different seats and the things we've done about the seats in the bus. No, that wasn't the question. I want to know if you're going to get on the bus. And the driver of the bus, he may be new, he may not be new. We've been talking about drivers of the bus, but are you going to get on the bus? And the bus is a big, long thing with lots of seats in it. And we've made sure that they're nice and shiny and they get washed every day. Are you going to get on the bus? You have a ticket in your hand. You're at the bus station. Are you going to get on the bus? I really like the headlights of buses these days. That's
yes. And hey, when the bus comes along, I'll throw you in front of the headlights. How about that?
Well, she's more likely going to throw one of her other executives in front of the bus so she doesn't get run over. I threw another executive under the bus, like she threw 600 other employees under the bus. They haven't got a job. 200 other people who are expecting a job don't have a job. And CBC is still not paying for itself.
Yeah.
But there is this bonus. And you know what? We performed so well getting rid of 600 people. We've got extra money now. Let's give ourselves a bonus.
Yeah. Well, and especially since typically what happens with that is that, the government funding doesn't change year to year, generally speaking. So the fact that you've got rid of 600 people, but yet you've still got, 30 billion or whatever the budget is, that's that money just now can be used for other things, including bonuses, funnily enough, right?
Yeah, and it's kind of funny that the French language, the French CBC is not taking the same kind of hits as the English one. So they're sort of saving the French one at the cost of the English one, it seems, and that has to be fully explained as well. Is it that important that the French language CBC maintains itself, even if it's not paying for itself very well? Is that important?
Yeah. Well, good question. Yeah. All right. We kind of the CBC's got a lot of explaining to do still. Are these conservative right in what their attitude has been? I'm not so sure I like the idea that the conservatives that Mr. Poilievre is bringing up about let's get rid of the CBC. I think Canada needs its CBC, and there's a lot of jobs and so on dependent upon things like CBC.
I used to listen to CBC a lot. I can't handle it anymore. I used to listen to CBC because I would get pretty good news. I get pretty good features. I would get information, very good information, but I can't handle listening to it anymore. It used to be one of my go-to stations. It'll be NPR in the States, and it would be CBC, and I'd listen to those alternatively. Get in the information I want, but I can't handle the CBC anymore. Sometimes in the afternoon it's okay, but during the morning is just rubbish. And they want to do the talk show format kind of thing that they don't do it that well. No wonder they're losing all kinds of money. and then they hire guys like Jean Gomeshi, who was a real weirdo, and they hired him because he was an Iranian guy that had a rock band, and they thought it was really cool. And it turns out to be a real sex weirdo, and that really helped the CBC, didn't it? And then they did something to Wendy Mesley to get rid of her. We did not defend her. They're weak, they're spineless, and I don't know. They're not the CBC that used to be.
Yeah, and not the CBC it used to be. Yeah, and these things. This is actually happening, unfortunately, to a lot. And I think we need the CBC, but we need it back the way it used to be.
Yes. And it's not a profit-driven thing. It has to be cut down to its bones, where you're going to get a radio or a TV show that is informative and directs information towards Canadians that need it. in a mostly non-biased fashion, if that's ever possible, and to stay away from political correctness and woke stuff. Just give me the facts, ma'am. That's it.
Well, that's you're covering news, but also the other thing about CBC is it has to come up with television programs as well. Fictional programming, that type of thing. That's part and parcel of its budget, and that's part and parcel of its remit.
I think they should hire private enterprise to do that and do that for the CBC, because obviously CBC are failing in that. I mean, they did do the Dragons Den. I think that was one of theirs. That was brilliant. I mean, I have to give them that.
Yeah, it's one program out of a whole bundle, and I have to say that CBC's been going off. The programming on CBC has been going south for many, many years,
and nobody's watching it, and nobody's watching the news. Even with Peter Mansbridge, who was a trusted voice, even he was coming up third. And anyway, I think it's time to leave. You have to go to work.
Yeah,
pay your tax.
I have to go to the landlord and tenant board today. So there we go. Yeah,
there you go. So without further ado, I bid you adieu. Let's get rid of that Gaza. Pray for peace, everyone. It doesn't look good right now. They look like they're going to crush into Rafah. The United States has no power over Israel at all. And that's the only hope that the poor Palestinians have. They don't want to rely on the United States, but the United States is the only one that can rein in Israel, and they're not doing a very good job of that. Yeah. And in Ukraine, if Zelensky comes here, geez, I just hope they don't mess up like they did last time in Parliament.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Have a great day, everyone.